Hello, everybody. This is Danielle Stewart, your candidate for mayor of Beckley in 2020. And we're here today with the first of what I hope to be many roundtables. This specific roundtable, we're going to be talking with some small business owners here in Beckley just to talk about some of their issues and see what's going on. I need to point out right up front that our small business owners here have agreed to come on, but that doesn't mean that they're endorsing me as a candidate for mayor. They just agreed to come on and talk with me on air as we're doing that. So who we have here is we have Stephanie Bell, who owns Computer Chick, and then we have Dr. Christy Dumas, who owns the Brain Training Center. Stephanie, would you like to tell us a little bit more about your business?
Sure. I have a small computer repair shop on South Kanawha Street, and I do all the things with all the computers. I fix them, I upgrade them, I build them, I rescue people's data that they've lost, all kinds of things.
All righty. Christy, you'd like to tell us about the Brain Training Center?
Sure. So I own the Brain Training Center, which is a wellness center that offers neurofeedback, as well as having a yoga studio inside. I actually own two businesses in town. I also own Dumas Psychology Collective, which is a licensed behavioral health center that is community-based. So we have a lot going on.
Well, again, thank you both for joining us. And so I'm just going to start, like I say, asking questions and kind of free flow, so we can kind of jump in as we go. I'd like to start with you, Christy, because you have two businesses, but they're also relatively new businesses in Beckley. What kind of challenges did you face in starting a business here in Beckley?
Well, I think one of the number one challenges is finding space. Finding office space that is affordable and that is functional for the service that you're trying to provide. As a startup business, most people don't have an extra $2,500 a month in a startup phase to simply pay for space, and that is not inclusive of any of the utilities or any of the parts, the materials, or anything else that you may need to get started. That is not inclusive of paying for fees for licensure, for passing inspections. And I found having businesses as a startup in Beckley to be extremely difficult and huge lack of resources, really.
Okay, moving to Sebi, your business has been established a little bit longer. What are your challenges with operating a business in Beckley?
The biggest, I have to agree with Christy for one thing. Fortunately, that's not a huge challenge for me right now, but for years I had to run out of my house because I couldn't afford to have any sort of office space that was suitable to my business. But for me, I think my biggest challenge is just lack of access to good marketing. Some of the options around here, like billboards, are very expensive to have. Basically, any sort of advertising that can reach the general public is also very expensive. And we don't have a huge pool to draw from here as a small business as far as getting a customer base, because a lot of the larger corporate businesses do stomp on top of that. So.
Okay. Continuing on kind of with that theme, so I guess, you are in competition then with some of the big box stores or national chains?
Specifically Staples.
Okay.
Yeah. There's, I think that's the only big box around here that offers the same things that I do, or at least they try.
Certainly not the same level of personal service.
No.
So, Christy, how do you found basically the market here? Is it sufficient to support your business? Are you receiving competition from larger businesses?
So I think that one of the things that I was keenly aware of when I entered the business was, who is my competition? And it was, but for the grace of God, that we were able to see the business to fruition until we could start getting some reimbursement for services, because you do have much larger companies who are seeing people quickly and not probably as personally as they should, but because they've been around for so long, because they've been established and they've been in the area, they are able to maintain whether they are giving a great quality service or not. And so as a startup in this area, waiting for 6 months to a year to get licensure, to start to see reimbursement from the state, it is very hard for small, grassroots, community-based businesses to thrive here. There's a reason why they don't usually make it past year 2. It's very hard. It's very hard to continue to be competitive. One of my biggest competitors is not even here. They're in the Charleston area, and I used to work for the firm. I was the psychologist that built the referral base here in Raleigh County and in the surrounding areas. And so when you are going up against, people because they have been around for so long, but they aren't even local. They don't even have their finger on the pulse of what's going on in our community. But yet and still, that continues to be the competition. I believe Raleigh County, because of the work that I've done in the area, and I've worked very hard on my reputation and being an advocate of mental health, I think people are coming around, and they're seeing that they don't have to leave the area to get a quality product, and that it's more tailored to the needs of our community, because I actually live in the community. So it's getting there. It's getting to the point where it's sufficient enough, but we're not quite there yet.
Have you had, Stebby had mentioned about marketing issues and getting your name out there. Have you had challenges with that?
It is very, very challenging, and it can be very expensive. What has helped me is that I do have resources. I have a relative who owns a PR and marketing firm who is willing to help me for very little to nothing. But outside of that, when I have had to go beyond what she's able to provide, it has been expensive. I mean, building websites, brochures, rack cards, those things they're very expensive. And if you're a small business who is breaking even or, making it, those extra expenses tend to add up. I mean, even things as small as boosting posts on Facebook, having a budget to just do that is yet another expense and bill that, when you're prioritizing things, tend to fall to the bottom because it is so expensive and very time consuming. So it's hard.
My mother worked for Beckley newspapers for 30 years, and a lot of that time was in advertising. And that was one of the things she always brought. It's a catch-22. You got to have a lot of money to advertise, but the businesses can't stay open if all you're doing is paid for advertisement. It's very tough. And I can speak, as a candidate and the stuff that I've tried to do and how expensive that is. And it's quite a bit for sure. Mm-hmm. So, Sebby, moving back to you for a second. Some people have an issue in the city of Beckley with the 1% sales tax. As a business owner, do you have an issue with that? What are your thoughts on it?
I wouldn't say that I have a huge issue with it. I think that now that we have a 1% sales tax for our city from the state, as well as a 1% sales tax in the city for the B&O, that's starting to get a little hard, but I deal with it. So, and I do know that a lot of people are tempted to just, and our city boundaries are so weird because we have all these little pockets and what do they call them, donut holes or something. I can't remember.
Exactly, yeah.
So I know that people are really tempted to just find a spot that's just outside of the city limits and still within reach of the citizens to avoid that, what turns out to be an additional 2% on top of what we already have to pay. So, yeah, it definitely impacts us.
I don't know, Christy, with your services, do you fall under the 1% sales tax?
Oh, we still pay our share of taxes, even as a service delivery model. So yeah, it still affects us. It affects us a little bit differently, but it yet and still does.
Okay. Well, I will say I've talked to a couple other business owners, and I've talked to a lot of residents, and it's a lot of the residents are against it. I even had one I talked to yesterday who was like, I'll go to a county area just because of that 1% sales tax. But then the flip side of that is what I've heard is that we're okay with the 1% sales tax as long as we can see that it's being used to support the businesses versus other things, other priorities. Would you all agree with that statement?
Absolutely.
That was going to be the next thing I said was I think I would feel a little better about this extra, actually 2% that we end up paying if I could see what it was doing for my business. I haven't really been able to see what's doing for my business.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's a fair statement, and something that I've also heard from other individuals as well. So, Chris, I know Sebi's kind of the sole owner. She doesn't have employees. So this is really more for you because I know that you have employees. Have you had issues finding employees, quality employees, training?
It's funny that you should ask this question right now. I am probably one of the only businesses locally that I'm aware of that was actually looking to hire in the last 6 weeks during the pandemic. My admin assistant got married and moved away during the Rona. And so I was left to try to hire. And I became so frustrated during the hiring process that I decided that I'm doing another webinar on marketing yourself and finding work post-Rona, coronavirus. I posted the job and got 65 applicants for one administrative assistant job. Now, the problem, though, was that we had a lot of people who lived in Ohio, who lived in Washington, D.C., Virginia, the DMV area, lots of folks with master's degrees for an administrative assistant position, and it was very hard we had to do a whole screening process to narrow it down to people who lived locally, who did not see this as a temporary position, who were qualified, who didn't sit behind the keyboard and just point and click. So I think that there are a lot of people out there who desire work, but may not have the skills and the experience to fill some of the positions that are out there. So there were no shortage of people applying for the position, but when the rubber hit the road, there were maybe 5 people who were qualified to do the work. And so that lets me know that there are a multiplicity of things going on right now in the job market that businesses may not be prepared to handle or even be able to train and transition people to do what they need and want them to do. So this is an issue around here. And, I hate to go outside of the area or even consider someone outside of the area because that brings with it a whole other set of problems and concerns and issues. So it has been quite the experience. I think that there is a workforce out there, but we have to be able and willing to train people to do what we need them to do. And I don't know that I always have time to do that. I sort of need people to come in and be able to hit the ground running, and that's not always the case.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of what I've heard from other people as well. Though I have not, that's the first that I've heard of people really applying from like Ohio or DC area. So I find that very interesting. Were they willing to move to Beckley, or they just saw it and applied?
Well, most of them, I always say everybody sends their representative to the interview or to the application. They send their representative. You find out who the real person is, unfortunately, later on, probably after you've hired them. But, people said initially that they were willing to relocate. And I did have a lot of people who applied that didn't live in Raleigh County. They lived in Nicholas or Wyoming and Kanawha and other places. So I think a lot of that was probably fueled by coronavirus and people either being, underworked or laid off. I think that people probably have found themselves in very temporary situations right now and looking for something. So I think that that's probably where a lot of onus for that comes from, having people who have applied from other areas. But I do think it fundamentally comes down to having a workforce that may or may not be prepared to fill some of the positions that we have.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. Sebi, like I say, I know you don't have any employees. What would it take for you to expand, or are you even looking to expand?
It was actually part of my roadmap to try and bring in an employee this year, and I don't know that that's going to happen now. But probably my biggest challenges have to do with all of the incidental expenses that you have with an employee, other than paying their wages, all the taxes and the health coverage, and of course things should happen, and you have to cut their hours or whatever. Then there's all those considerations to be made, and as far as what it would take for me to be able to get somebody in here, I'm hoping to reach a certain point in my income stability before I bring somebody in, because that's a lot of responsibility to bring somebody into your business, and I don't want to have somebody relying on me and then not be able to live up to those standards. So
it was probably the scariest decision I ever made to stop wearing the million hats in my business, because when you called DPC, I was the one answering the phone. I was the one scheduling. I was the one doing the billing. So I actually have employees and I have contractors. So all of my clinicians are contractors. So it's both. And so when I decided to pull the trigger and hire someone, it was just scary, that someone is depending on me for, to pay their bills and to, survive. It is a lot. And there are a lot of incidental things that happen. And one of the things, because the coronavirus has really sort of shaped the way we look and think about things, at least right now, I was able and we closed early. We didn't wait for someone to tell us, it's time to shut down. We closed extremely early, like the weekend after March 13th. And I remember it vividly because that was a Friday. That's my birthday. And so we had an emergency staff meeting the next Saturday, the 14th. We all got together. We we closed the office, and I was able, until my admin left, she received full salary, full pay. She was at home. And it took us a while to get telehealth set up, but I was fortunate enough that I was able to continue paying her at regular salary and regular rate until she left. And that felt good. It was tight, definitely, but it was the right thing to do. And so yes, Cynthia's right. It is a lot of responsibility. It is a scary thing, but it is also hugely beneficial to be able, as the owner and CEO, to be able to focus on the business aspect instead of having to worry about everything else. I was once told by the counselor from the Hive, she said, "Christy, you need to be working on your business, not at your business." And so I have lived by those words. I've tried to live by those words, and it has made things a lot easier.
So you have used the West Virginia, the Hive for assistance?
I am a client of the Hive. They have been very instrumental, and they were, very helpful when we did the needs assessment about, what do I actually need from them. And it came back to the point that Sebi made early on. It was PR and marketing. My business plan, my strategy, my structure, understanding who my clients were, I had all that down. But it was the PR and marketing piece that was just a struggle because it was so expensive, and understanding the best way to do that. West Virginia is like no place else, and particularly southern West Virginia. Very typical marketing strategies that would work other places fall flat here. So you really have to align yourself with a resource that understands the best way to make those things happen here, because using huge marketing firms from here, there, and everywhere, it's not the same here, and so you really have to be able to do it.
And I'll say it's a hard lesson when you pour money that you don't have a lot of into it, and you just don't get anything out of it.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, that's one of the things with marketing. It's sometimes very challenging to find out if what you're doing is actually effective or not,
Mm-hmm.
And what specifically was effective, so that you can, do more of that and less of something else.
Mm-hmm.
So I really have two more questions for each of you. First, for Sebi, what keeps you up at night about your business? What's your biggest fear?
I guess it's just it's all basically around the same thing, that in my business in particular, my income fluctuates greatly. It's like I can have outstanding months, and I can have months where I hardly have anything come into my shop. And I've been working on some things to try and even that out some. I have some service plans that that I offer. I offer things to people so that they pay me on more like a monthly level, and in return, of course, they get a lot of things for that. But I think if I had more stability in my income for the business, then I would be able to relax into the process a lot more and move forward and have a richer experience here for the community. It's just so hot and cold, honestly.
Okay. Christy, same question to you. What keeps you up at night about your business?
While mine does center around finances, it's not so much the ebb and flow, because I feel like we have a very we have an audience that is going to be pretty steady. We get a lot of referrals from state agencies, and so we have captive audience most of the time. We're never usually lacking for clients. What does cause me pause is the rate of reimbursement from the state for services. So we render these services. We do excellent work. We really individualize our services. People are not just a number when they come to Duma Psychology Collective or the Brain Training Center. So we do excellent work. It just takes so long for us to get that reimbursement processed back from the state and from private MCOs or private insurance carriers. It's that sort of thing. Now, there's not a lot of control that we have with the private MCOs or private insurance carriers, but the state can do better. There should not be a reason that a small business has to wait 6 months to be reimbursed for a therapy session.
Wow, that's
we have, and even demand payments from the state. You know, we certainly don't mind taking on cases that are court ordered, but you know, it can take a very long time for us to see reimbursement. And so I'm continually paying my contractors, I'm continually paying my clinicians, and reimbursement for that is way down the line. I can't look at my clinicians and say, sorry, we're waiting. That doesn't fare well for people who are trying to pay their bills and who are trying to survive. So I think that would be the thing that would keep me up, is just the rate of reimbursement for the services that we provide.
okay. Well, yeah, in my previous job, I did a lot of stuff with the state, and we at one point were at 9 months on getting a reimbursement, but it ended up finally getting a little bit faster. I can only imagine, because we went so long, we were actually like, okay, now we're really getting worried about how we're going to pay our bills.
Yeah.
And then finally, whatever happened, mine was this with environmental protection, so they had a different way. But I can only imagine, yeah, that's a lot of stress, really. And same for you, Sebby, with that ebb and flow and how are things going to go this month. I can see how that's challenging. And so we'll start this one with Christy. The last question I have. How can the city help you?
That is a great question. But I think one of the biggest things that we have to do in the city is a paradigm shift. We have to shift our thinking that everything that we need or anything that is quality has to be found outside of our city limits. That, what is happening elsewhere is far superior to the talent and the treasure that we have right here in our city. And that is a whole paradigm shift that has to happen. Supporting local, those are things that I've heard much more in the last 6 weeks or 7 weeks, encouraging people to, look within and support the businesses that we have here. But it has to extend far beyond the coronavirus. It has to extend beyond that. And I think that comes from the city investing in the businesses in the area by having opportunities for PR and marketing, for more opportunities to showcase and highlight businesses, having some rent control in some of these, business districts and areas so that these small businesses have a chance to survive. That we need a fighting chance. I always buy local. I always shop local. I've been a client of Sebby's when I didn't go to Staples. I sought her out and said, I need help. So I think that comes from all of us as, citizens in the city, really having a whole paradigm shift in how we think about business and supporting entrepreneurs. It has to happen.
All right, thank you. Sebby, I'm going to move to you for that one. How can the city help you?
And I'm going to continue with the idea of a paradigm shift, but also to include in that, I'd like to see more support for the micro businesses, because I think that a lot of the focus and support understandably, in our area is for the businesses that, I mean, if you don't bring in at least $7,000 to $10,000 a month, they'll hardly even talk to you. Our Chamber of Commerce is very expensive for a small business to be involved with. The services that are offered, I mean, they don't seem to have much interest in helping to lift up these mom and pop businesses that are trying to get established, and they just want to go for the ones that put in all the tax money, I guess. That's the way I feel about it, and that makes me sad because we struggle all the more to try and get up to that level. And maybe we'll never get up to that level. Maybe we're not meant to get up to that level. But we provide an important service to this community, these small mom and pop type businesses, and I think that we're an essential element for what this community needs to be, which is not just a big corporate area. We need to focus on the people, and that's my feeling.
Well, I will say I agree with you completely. That was one of the things that I brought up about economic development. If a big company goes to the state and says, "Hey, I want to locate here," the state will throw $22 million at it like it's nothing. Yet, instead, why don't you give the city just $1 million and say, support your small businesses, and I will give you more employment, and I will give you better jobs than what giving $22 million to an out-of-state corporation is going to get you. Very much thank you. I appreciate your all's comments and information. I have some ideas that I think are going to help with that. I won't go through those here because really I wanted this to be an opportunity for you all to highlight your issues. But if anybody would like to know more about it, I've done a position paper number 5 on economic development. I encourage you to go to my website, DanielleStewartForMayor.com. Check out that position paper and let me know your thoughts. I've covered some of the things, marketing, risk management, and a few other things that's been mentioned here. So take a look at that. Let me know what you think. Again, ladies, I appreciate it. And hopefully we'll see you audience-wise next week, Thursday at 7 o'clock. We're working to have a roundtable with real estate professionals to talk about housing and our rental stock. So thank you all very much. You all have a good day. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.